that brings us to the habit tracker. Now, this is one I'm so excited about, and I know I've been saying that for the previous one as well. I think as we get into the more nitty-gritty, I get more excited, like the action tracker I've covered many, many times. The habit tracker, I just gave it a revamp recently. Credits to Life RPG in Notion. Whoever built that, I bought the template. I got some very good inspiration on how to sort of rebuild this habit tracker. And my God, do I like it. It's a really amazing part of this system. Anyway, let's first get into a little bit of the theory. As mentioned before, habits and actions are on the same level. They're both things that we just do in the here and now, that we're executing on in the here and now. But the difference is that actions are always unique and habits are the same. So habits are repeated behaviors that we do. So let's have a look at the element connections that we make with the habit tracker. We put them in the daily review because every day we want to track the actual habits that we're trying to build. Inside of the monthly review is where we set new habits. So once a month, we reflect on what are the habits that I'm trying to build. Am I still trying to build those? Do I want to put them to integrated, or do I want to stop building them? And then inside of our project tracker, as we discussed earlier, we can also create habits that we need in order to work on a specific project. Okay, as you can see over here, the habits live on the same level as the SMART goals, but that is because we revisit the actual habits during our monthly review. But actually, on a more executional level, they are at the same level as the actions because we would be doing them every day or almost every single day. And then during our daily review, we sort of track how well we are executing on these different habits. Okay. The key goal of the habit tracker is to automate behaviors that enable us to realize our vision, goals, and projects. This is the beauty about habits. Habits are behaviors that we can train ourselves in. We can almost automate them. By repeating them over and over, they start taking less and less resources. And we're going to explore a little more what that looks like in a moment. But the goal here is to build certain actions that don't require us to have to think about them every single time we want to do them. So, whenever we encounter a situation, the first time we never really know what to do. So, for example, let's say we are starting over here, right? This is the new situation. This is our starting point. Now, this is where we want to get to. The first time that we encounter this situation, everything on this path is new. So we're doing this, everything is new. Everything is new. And that means it will take us a lot of cognitive resources and a lot of behavioral resources to actually get from point A to point B. Right? So this would often be the case with regular actions. We're trying to confront new situations. It takes a lot of resources. But the next time we encounter this situation, actually these steps are already slightly colored in because we've already seen this before. So it doesn't take as much energy to get from A to B because we already know which steps to take. So it's going to go a lot quicker. And then as we keep repeating this same thing, every time we do it, it gets more deeply ingrained. And by the time we have done 100 repetitions, the path between A and B is so clear that we're just instantly there, right? It barely requires any time. It barely requires any resources. So this can both go for positive habits, but it can also go for negative habits. So, for example, I might have the habit that every time I enter the kitchen, I am going straight for a cookie. So this right here is called the trigger. It is what triggers my behavior. Then this over here is the actual behavior that I'm doing. And then over here is the reward or the punishment. Now, whenever I get a reward, that is when I keep ingraining this habit further. Whenever I get a punishment, that is when I sort of take myself away from the habit, right? So it becomes a little bit thinner like this. So habits can both be good and can both be bad. It basically means something in our environment triggers us and now we behave a certain way. So ideally what we want to do is we want to get rid of all the unwholesome habits, right? We want to stop eating that cookie. We don't want to go for that cigarette. We don't want to take the car everywhere. And instead, we want to replace them with healthy habits. I want to eat a carrot and I want to go to the gym and maybe I'm going to walk everywhere. So that is really the power of building habits. An important thing to keep in mind when we're trying to build habits is that we have limited resources. And earlier, we already talked about trade-offs. Saying yes to one thing also means saying no to everything else. And the same goes for when we're trying to build habits. Something that I very often see in myself, is that we want to do everything all at once at the same time, right? Our entire culture is geared towards quick fixes, 30-day challenges, getting it now. And trust me, I've done my fair share of those. But at the end of the day, there's only so much we can do at the same time, right? If I want to try to work out every day and meditate every day and read a book every day and stop eating sugar and stop smoking cigarettes all at once, the likelihood that I fail is going to be huge. And the reason for that is because we have limited resources, right? So let's say, for example, that I have 75% resources, right? In the form of energy, in the form of time. And the habits that I'm trying to build altogether actually total up to 80%. If I'm going to try to do this for a full month, I will fail. And the problem is that probably I won't just fail one of them, but I'm going to fail at all three of them because I'm overexerting myself. And then at one point I fail at one, but actually the next day I will try that one again, but I will fail at another. So I'm spreading myself too thin. So we need to take a moment and need to accept our limitations. And actually I will say I have 75% resources. This habit over here is not relevant right now. I'm first going to focus on building these two habits. These fall within my actual limitations because they add up to 70%. I have a little bit of energy left over. I'm going to do these for a month. And then after a month, this habit is going to be ingrained. And the moment we ingrain a habit, right? This is what we were looking at earlier. The moment we ingrain a habit, it's going to take less resources. And the moment it takes less resources, let's say, for example, this ingrained habit was this one over here. Now I can actually say, okay, I'm also going to add in this one because these all together are now going to add up to 70%. So I'm being more realistic. I'm taking the time to actually build these habits, but that's what we're doing. We're building habits, right? They take time to be built, and we cannot build everything all at once. So this energy management, this resource management is a very important part of habit development because, like we explored, the real magic in life is compound interest. It's making these small incremental gains every single day. And initially you're like, there's barely any growth happening. But as we continue over time, the growth starts to compound. But if we keep shooting ourselves in the foot because we want to go like this, but then we go down like this, and we want to go like this, but we go down like this. Actually, it might seem in the moment we're making some progresses, but we're actually leaving so much result on the table because we're constantly overexerting ourselves and then need to take a whole bunch of steps back. And every time we take steps back, we're missing out on these compound interests. So slow and steady wins the race, right? Life is a marathon, not a sprint. Chill the fuck out. Take your resources into consideration and just slowly build the habits that really make an impact. Okay, let us get into the Notion aspect because this database, I love it. Love it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to go into the database collection zone. And right here, I'm going to make a page and I'm going to call that the habit tracker. And then down here, I'm going to create a table. So this is a different way how you can also create tables. It's by first creating a page and then choosing to create a table. I'm going to give this one the tree icon. And then, of course, it also has its own cover. And I hope we can find it just like that. I'm just going to call this one the master table. And as that is loading, I'm actually going to drag it right over there. Perfect. Okay, the first property that we have is the habit name. As the name suggests, that is the name of the actual habit that we're trying to build. And then we're going to have a few properties that are sort of best practices for when you want to build a habit. And basically, the things we want to track is what is the location or the physical context in which I want to do this habit, at what time of day do I want to do this habit, and what is the duration. So basically, by having a very clear structure, it becomes easier for us to adopt habits. If we're always doing it at the same time every day, or even if it's a habit that we do 4 times a week, it's easier for us to sort of maintain that habit. When there's a lot of variability, it takes more resources. And as we looked earlier, more resources often means that it's more difficult to implement. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a property over here. I'm going to call that location/context. Then we're going to add one, which we'll call time of day. And then we're going to add a duration. And then the next thing that we're going to do is add a status. And this is sort of the status of the current habit. So this could either be we are trying to build this habit. It can be we have integrated this habit, which basically means it doesn't really require us any resources anymore. It just automatically happens, like brushing my teeth, that doesn't really require anything. It's just really ingrained. It could be a terminated habit. And those are the options. So it can either be building, integrated, or terminated. Now, as we explored earlier, the habit tracker is also related to the project tracker. And later on, we're going to set this up. But for now, I'm just going to make this relationship and basically say, connect the habit tracker to the project tracker, make that a two-way relationship. Beautiful. Put that down like this. Okay. One more tag that we want to add is the frequency. So this is how often do we want to do this habit? And this can either be 1 time per week, it can be 2 times per week, 3 times per week, 4 times per week, 5 times per week, 6 times per week, and of course it can also be daily. And I think many habits will be daily, but there's just a few different options here. Let's just quickly style them to make it look nice. I always like having colors that sort of merge well into each other. So we're going to have red over here. I'm actually going to make that one yellow. And then we're going to have daily. Okay. Actually going to turn that one. Let's just make that one orange for now. Wait. Orange. Yellow. That looks better. Cool. Okay. So that is the frequency. Now, the thing with habits is that we want to track them. So we actually want to see how successful are we at executing the habits. For the longest time, I had this convoluted setup using the daily review and then adding the habits to the daily review. We just sort of had 2 databases and it was quite messy. And then at some point, I bought this template by this guy. I think it's called RPG, Notion RPG, something like that. And basically in there, he had this very ingenious method for sort of tracking things. And once that clicked in my mind, I was like, we need to do this for the habit tracker. So the way this works is actually we are going to create a separate database. And this one we're going to call habit tracker entries. And we're going to create that table over here. And this is basically going to be a database solely for tracking every time that we have either hit or missed a habit. So what we want to have over here is we want to have a slot for the habit entry. Then we want to make a relationship to our habit tracker. And we want to add a date property. And then lastly, we want to have a checkbox property. Okay. I'm just going to give this one really quick an emoji. Okay. Now we're going to go back into our habit tracker database. And what we want to do now is we want to create a database button. So earlier we looked at making buttons inside of a page, but actually we can also create buttons inside of a database. So we are going to create two separate buttons. One is going to be called hit, and the other one is going to be called miss. These are the buttons that we are going to use to track our habits. So basically what we want to do is whenever we either hit or miss our habit and we click one of these buttons, we want to add a page into the entries database. And in that entries database, we're actually tracking all of our habit entries, which we can then use. We can sort of pull it back into this one to keep track of how many times we've hit this habit, at which percentage rate we've hit this habit, and we can even create a habit streak. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up this button over here, and we're going to say, when this button is clicked, I want to add a page to this habit entry database that we just created. The name of the habit entry, I'm going to make that the time triggered. So what we can do is over here, we can give it a dynamic name. So I'm going to say the name of the entry is going to be time triggered. This is just a simple way to keep track. We're not really going to look into this database. We're only going to use it to pull information back into this database. And I'll show you in a little bit what I mean by that. Then the next thing we want to do is we want to say, okay, this entry that I just made, it is related to this particular habit from which it's triggered, because we want to make sure that we're connecting each entry to the actual habit that we're trying to track. So I'm going to say habit tracker is related to this page. Then the date is going to be the date triggered. Actually, we're going to use the time triggered. It's a bit more precise. And for the hit button, we are going to say the checkbox is checked. So now whenever we press this button, I'll just press it right over here. Boom. You can see one page has been created. And if I open that up right here, you can see December 24th, we've checked it, we hit this one, and this one happened for the habit tracker new page. Well, it's called new page. Let's just say, for example, meditate. Let's just call it meditate. And you can also see it over here as a relational item. We have now made one hit for the habit meditate. Okay. Let me actually add a little more styling here. We're going to make this one a checkbox. And then inside here, I also actually want to make that. I think we should be able to add... we're just going to add regular old emoji. Boom. Okay. So that right there is the hit. Now, we want to do the same for the miss button, but instead of making the checkbox checked, we want to make it unchecked, because we did track the habit, but we did not do the habit. So we're going to make that one checked, and we're actually going to call this one miss, and I'll just do exclamation mark miss. Boom. And I'm going to call that miss, and then pretty sure there should be a... Yeah, beautiful. Okay, this one's going to be miss. If I click this button now, you will see on the right, it is also going to add a habit entry into that database. But this new habit entry that we just made is now going to be unchecked. Hey there. Just a brief intermission to let you know that you can get free access to the masterclass worksheet by dropping your email address in the link down below. And inside of this worksheet, you will find a step-by-step outline to track your progress as you're going throughout this masterclass. You will also find the complete slide deck that we are using in this video. You will find all of the formulas ready to copy and paste, meaning you don't have to write them out all yourself, but you can just plug them into your system and start using them straight away. And this one is a really good one. You will find the 2 original reflection databases, and this will literally save you hours of setup time. You can just plug them into your system and start using them straight away. And then just as a tiny little cherry on top, you will also get all of the database and template covers that we are using in this masterclass. So if you want to grab all this stuff for free right now, then drop your email address down below and I'll send it to you straight away. Okay, this is the basic setup of how we can track habits using the habit tracker. But now we just have a bunch of entries in this habit tracker entry database, and that doesn't really make any sense or any logic. So we're going to add a few formulas. And later on, once again, we're going to look at all these different formulas. We're going to make a few formulas that are going to help us make sense of all this data. Okay, the first formula we're going to add is called the hit rate. And I'll just make a little bullseye over here. Boom. Okay, beautiful. It works like that. What this formula basically does, it goes through all of the habit entries that we've made for this particular habit. And then it calculates out of all the habits that we tracked, like out of all the entries that we made, what was our hit rate. So in this particular case, we made 2 total entries with a 50% hit rate. Now, let's just add a few more hits, just to sort of show how this works, and maybe add a few more misses. And just like that, we have the total amount of entries that we made for this particular habit, and we have the hit rate that we have for this particular habit. So this is going to be our main thing for sort of judging how successful we are with a particular habit. Now, the other formula that we're going to add is going to be called the streaks. And in here, let's see, I think we'll also need to change the hit one over here and actually call it checkbox. Boom. What this formula does is it looks at this same list of entries and then sort of goes through it in reversed order to check how many hits in a row we've had before we encounter the first miss. So if I were to make 3 hits, for example, it's going to give us a streak of 3. And if I do another 3 hits, it's going to give us a streak of 6. And the moment we have a single miss, the streak is reset. So these things, I just really love them. I love how much flexibility formulas gives you in Notion. You can really build very advanced stuff. And this is just a beautiful way where we can sort of have the hit rate per habit, and then we can also have these streaks. We can keep track of how consistently we've been doing these habits. So this is basically going to be all the way in the front. Okay. The first thing we want to do then is we're going to create a few over here, and this is actually going to be the daily habits. So I'm going to give that a tree. I'll just give it a little sun. And I want to pretty much hide all of the properties except of the hit rate. I want to have the streak, and I want the hit and miss buttons. I'm going to make these as small as we can. Going to make this a little bit smaller, and then we're going to make this a little bit smaller. Now, this is going to be the habit list that we will use during our daily review. So what I want to do in the filters, I want to say I only want to show habits that are currently active for building. So I only want to have habits that we're currently building. Any habit that is integrated or terminated doesn't need to show up. So I just want habits that we're building. Maybe we can add a few more habits. Read book, hit the gym, and then this would sort of be our habit tracking space. So this one we can then add into our daily review. So over here we can remove this bad boy, and we can just say empty view habit tracker daily habits, just like that. And then we're going to do the same at the end. We'll just remove shutdown habits here. We can actually empty view habit tracker daily habits. Boom. Just like that. And now, as we are doing our daily review, we can simply hit, miss, boom. That's it. And then every day we can just hit that and we have a fully functional habit tracker with all of our active habits. Okay, that's the first part of the habit tracker. And then the second part, what we want to do is sort of have these habits inside of the project tracker. So we're going to make another view, and I'm going to say empty view. And then we actually want to have a few more properties available for this one, because you also want to set all of that extra context. I'm actually going to put the hit rate in the front. Then we're going to have the habit name. Going to make the streak small. Hit or miss. This one we don't need in the project tracker view, because in the project tracker view, we're only going to create new habits that we might potentially be working on. So we're going to take this frequency one over here, going to shorten, boom, time of day, location and context, status. And then I think that should be good. I'm going to sort it and say status is ascending. And of course, we will need to make a filter that says only show me the habits that are related to this particular project, right? Because these are going to be the habits that we put inside of the project tracker. So I'm just going to add that tree emoji, going to add the seedling, and we're going to say project habits. Going to remove that one and say filter project tracker contains, and then we will put the project tracker template. So inside here, we're going to add empty view, habit tracker, project habits, hide that over here, go into this filter and set it to project tracker template. And just like that, we have now completed the project tracker dashboard. And if at any point we want to add a habit for a particular project, we can simply add it in here. It's automatically going to be related. And then as soon as we put that status to building every single day inside of our daily review, it's going to pop up, and it's very easy for us to track the habits. So very lean, very simple, super effective habit tracker. We're using this in the daily review. We're using it in the project tracker. And later on in this masterclass, we're also going to look at when we are actually reflecting and reviewing our habits during the monthly review. But yeah, habit tracker, one of my all-time favorites. If you want to build this entire Notion system from scratch using this masterclass, then all power to you. If you want to spend hours setting up complex databases and filters and templates and formulas, automations, and all this good stuff that we're covering in this masterclass, then all power to you. However, if you just want to get straight into it, if you want to get the fully functional template and start crafting your ideal life right now, then I can highly recommend getting the Notion of Life template. And as a little bonus, the first 50 people that sign up will also get a free 1-hour coaching session. So go in the link down below, grab that template right now, and yeah, thank you very much for your support.